Well, my friends, it's 100% official as Google just announced their highly anticipated Android 16 overhaul during the Android show. And as someone that's used Android for the past 15 years or so, this is probably the biggest change we've seen in quite a long time. We have a new design language, big changes to the core Pixel experience, and even Wear OS got some love in this update with a little mini overhaul as well. Needless to say, there is a ton that we need to go over, so real quick, let me give you a super simple rundown on everything you need to know, because your Pixel device is about to change in a pretty big way. As I mentioned, Google is changing things up in the Pixel world, and the main piece of this overhaul is their new Material 3 Expressive initiative. During the Android show, we saw our first official look at what this truly means, and according to Google, their overarching goal here is to inject more emotion into the interface, making the Android platform and their services more engaging and easier to use. Which it does make sense if you think about it, because we spend so much of our lives interacting with these screens, and it seems like Google wants that time to be less utilitarian and more fun, to say the least. Material 3 Expressive is their comprehensive answer to this, and the most immediately noticeable aspect for us users will be the introduction of incredibly natural, almost springy, bubbly animations. It's actually quite interesting to see this in action. UI elements almost appear to stick and react to each other with every single interaction, whether you're playing with sliders, flipping toggles, or even just dismissing notifications. There is a tangible, almost playful reaction to every tap, touch, and interaction, which I have to admit, my ADHD brain actually finds this incredibly satisfying. You can immediately see how it's designed to be more engaging because it adds an extra layer of depth and responsiveness that aims to break up the day-to-day monotony that can sometimes creep into using a smartphone. It's actually a similar philosophy to what I've enjoyed about OnePlus phones so much. Oxygen OS specifically is well known for that at this point, having these slick, visually appealing animations, and I think this is Google's way of bringing that same level of interactive polish to the core Android experience on Pixel. It makes the UI feel more playful, more fun to explore, and hopefully invoking that emotional impact that Google is aiming for so hard, which ultimately should be a good thing because a more responsive, engaging, and intuitively animated UI can make your phone feel faster, more polished, and less like a cold tool and more like a dynamic expression. But it isn't just about new animations, as Google gave us a deeper insight to the core of Material 3 Expressive when it comes to their app design, as developers have new guidelines and updated components to build their apps with. For starters, Material 3 Expressive provides developers with about 15 or so new or updated components to build with. For us as consumers, that translates to things like redesigned icon buttons, more intuitive navigation bars and rails, clearer progress indicators, and so much more. Effectively, a more refined and consistent toolkit for app creators. This means apps in general should not only look better, but also behave more predictably and cohesively across the entire operating system. Another big aspect of this is a new motion physics system. This is what will power those alive, fluid, and natural feeling interactions and transitions I mentioned. For you, it means apps will respond to your touch in a more organic and less rigid way. Alongside this, new topography styles are being introduced to better emphasize information hierarchy and highlight important actions, making it quicker and easier for you to understand what's on your screen and what does actually need your attention. Visually, developers will have access to a new set of 35 shapes for elements like avatars, image crops, and other decorative details inside these apps. This will allow for more visual personality and variety in app design, moving away from a one-size-fits-all look. This is complemented by an expanded color range, which will help to sharpen that visual hierarchy and clarify key actions, making UIs more scannable and understandable at a quick glance. And one of the coolest bits is a built-in shape morph animation, allowing for these incredibly smooth and clean transitions between shapes on screen. It's a small detail that does add a little level of polish. These are just the most notable highlights, but all of these aspects combined give Android a much-needed facelift. The deep attention to detail, from the physics of an animation to the new choices of their fonts and color themes, are very noticeable here. By providing these powerful and well-researched tools to developers, Google is certainly paving a way for a new generation of Android apps that are not only beautiful, but also more intuitive, engaging, and ultimately more enjoyable to use. And that's the big why behind Material 3 Expressive. Obviously, we'll have to get our hands on some of these custom-designed apps to see how it is, and we'll have to see how developers adopt these new principles inside their apps, but the foundation that Google is laying is very promising. Now, building on that foundation of Material 3 Expressive, Google is rolling out some significant core changes to the Pixel experience itself, and this is where things get really exciting for current and future Pixel owners. First, we get a real, genuine look at that redesigned quick settings and notification panel that has been so heavily rumored and leaked. It looks like it will feature resizable tiles that can actually change shape when toggled on and off. The brightness bar is noticeably blockier now with a more prominent slider handle, which should make it easier to grab and adjust more accurately. And a major visual change, there's now a background blur effect when you pull down the notification shade, allowing you to subtly see your wallpaper and its respective color theme, which will also carry over to the Recent Apps menu, by the way, adding a nice layer of depth and context with the operating system experience. Personally, I do think it looks great, don't get me wrong, and trust me, I know many Android skins like those from OnePlus and Samsung have been incorporating this Gaussian blur background as of late, and some might say the concept itself is very iOS-like, but I do feel Google's implementation is different here, and it's a little bit more distinct, thoughtfully integrated with the Material U aesthetic, which is something that certainly sets it apart. That said, there are a few more changes too, like the lock screen is also getting a slight redesign. When you have notifications on your screen, the day and the date will shift to the right corner of the at-a-glance widget. When your lock screen is clear of notifications, these elements will be positioned neatly underneath the full clock, just above the fingerprint sensor circle, which is just a nice redesign in general. We also got to see a bit more about the live update feature coming to Android 16. If you didn't already know, live updates is a brand new class of notifications for delivery, rideshare, or navigation apps where you can track the progress in real time without having to actually open the app itself. Today, we saw that it's available for the always on display mode, which is a nice touch, and overall, with the massive rise of popularity from these food delivery apps, this is a logical addition that should get a lot of usage with Android users. Personally, I view this overall design shift to be really nice, to say the least. It's a great starting point, and while ambitious for sure, it will likely take Google a few iterations over the next couple of years to perfectly hone every aspect. But what they've shown so far is a strong foundation. It's vibrant, it seems fun to use, and it does have that look of being genuinely engaging. What's really important here though is that I believe Google is significantly ahead of the curve with this redesign, especially with the persistent rumors that Apple is also gearing up for a major UI redesign with iOS 19. Google's vision should hopefully be out and available to customers first, and frankly, based off what I've seen so far, Google's Material 3 Expressive looks way more engaging than the proposed iOS 19 concepts floating around out there. To me, it's clear that Google's design and engineering teams have been working incredibly hard on this, even if the progress wasn't overall super visible during the initial Android 16 betas. They were certainly doing a lot of work in the background that we just didn't see until now. One more thing I forgot to mention though is that we also got a glimpse of how this new design will translate to Wear OS, most likely debuting as Wear OS 6. This is super important for a truly seamless experience, as Pixel's most logical wearable companion, the Pixel Watch, must share the same design DNA. And based off these initial visuals, it does look like Google nailed it here. The Wear OS update appears to follow these same core principles that we were anticipating for Pixel phones, talking about those hallmark Material 3 expressive traits like more natural, bouncy, and fluid animations that should make interacting with your watch feel significantly more responsive and organic. We're also seeing the implementation of dynamic color theming, which is something that I've been waiting for a long time. This will allow the operating system on your watch to adapt its color palette based on your chosen watch face, mirroring the personalization capabilities of your Pixel phone. Naturally, without hands-on time, it's difficult to make a definitive judgment about how this will play out. However, on paper, this Wear OS update appears to hit all the major checkboxes that users would want in the next generation of Wear OS. Better animations, better customization, a more intuitive UI, and Google does say that this new version of Wear OS with Material 3 Expressive is 10% more power efficient, which is a huge deal for watch users. Of course, we'll just have to wait and see and try it for ourselves, but the direction that we see so far seems overall super promising. So there you have it, my friends. Everything you need to know about the massive Android 16 overhaul and the Material 3 Expressive design language. As I said earlier, this is one of the biggest changes to Android we've seen in a long time. There's a lot of fun animations, bold color palettes, and redesigns to a lot of the core elements, and I'm super excited to see this roll out and experience it firsthand. With all that said, I've done so much talking now, and I'm going to shift it over to you guys. What do you think about this big UI overhaul? Are you excited about the direction of Material 3 Expressive? Do you think it's a good move for Google and Android? Based on what we know so far, do you think you'll enjoy it? Do you think it'll maybe be a waste of your time? Let me know in the comments down below. Honestly, this is such a huge change to Android. There's nothing more I'd love to hear what the Android community is thinking, so please leave your comments and we'll be looking at every one of them. Until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd with 9 to 5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.